Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of the CXO show. My name is Swapnil Kamat. I am the CEO of upGrad for Business. I'm looking unusually happy today because it's been a while since I recorded one of these episodes, and any one of y'all who's following this show now knows how much I love having these interactions with some of India's most successful professionals. And today I have Eric, who's definitely one of India's most successful professionals. He's had such interesting roles in interesting companies, and of course I'm going to read out his introduction as I do with all my guests. But I'm very excited to do this after a while. How are you, Eric?
I'm doing well, Swapnil. Excited to have a conversation with you.
Yes, because the whole objective of this show is to um, feature successful professionals, because I don't think successful professionals in India have a platform on which they can share their point of view, as do others, right? Because if you look at most platforms, they're often dominated by entrepreneurs, politicians, sports people, spiritual leaders, so on and so forth. But hardly anybody that's really running the economy, which are the exciting professionals of India, right? So that is the objective of this particular show. And like I said, I want any learner, whether you're from an HR background or non-HR background, I want you to go back having learned something from an HR professional who has a wide view on talent development in this particular country, right? So that's the objective that we typically run this show with. Eric, before we proceed further and we get to the business end of this particular conversation, I'm going to read out your introduction, right? So Eric James is the HR director, spearheading learning, organizational development, inclusion, and diversity at Flipkart, a company that truly requires no introduction. It's in our house every day, right? Whether we like it or not. Armed with an MBA in human resource management from Bangalore University, Eric boasts extensive experience spanning both established software firms and dynamic startups. Eric's career represents strategic HR leadership, particularly thriving in high growth startup environments. His forte lies in assembling and leading teams from the ground up, guided by a commitment to fostering innovation, value driven cultures. Notably, his influence extends across borders, having swiftly established teams in countries like Australia, the Middle East, Europe, United States, and Indonesia. Colleagues talk about Eric's sincere and dedicated management styles, witnessing his evolution as an HR professional across various assignments at VMware and Flipkart. His collaborative efforts with teams have led to impactful initiatives, enriching workplace experiences. Known for his sincerity and accessibility, Eric fosters a supportive work environment, ensuring every employee feels heard and valued. In addition to his wealth of experience, Eric holds numerous licenses and certifications in behavioral training, team coaching, and leadership, further amplifying his contribution to HR and organizational development. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thank you, Swapnil. It's
Yeah.
heartening to hear my introduction read by somebody else, but uh, yeah, it's an interesting conversation. Very humbled by whatever research your team and you have done.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for that introduction.
Yes, a lot of our guests like the introductions, because they're like, every time we have somebody to speak on our behalf, now we're going to start calling you, right? Because you've given us a very good introduction. So, like with all our guests, Eric, give me a succinct journey of yours from the point you've probably finished your last formal education to right now, right? I don't want you going into too many details, but I want my audience to really get a flavor of how your career is panned out from the start.
Yeah. Before I start off, Swapnil, I wish I had the level of clarity that I'm speaking about my past, like the way I looked at my past. But it's a
Yeah.
series of um, experiments and a series of curious things that I wanted to explore in my career, and that's how I
Mm,
started off.
mm,
Uh, Broadly, have around 19 years of experience. The first 7 years have been with software companies
mm,
per se. They were
mm,
not software companies or sophisticated software companies then. They were
mm,
very small companies then.
mm,
Um, the companies like Schneider, NetApp, they were like 70, 80 people when I joined them. Um, Youngster out of college who just wanted to make a difference. I think I came back from the Middle East, did my engineering, and I wanted to prove something to the world and to my parents who always thought that engineering degree was the only way to go forward. So I picked up HR. Quickly, when I joined a company, I realized that there is much more to HR than going to campus and meeting a lot of people. And that's where my journey started in this. After my formal degree of learning, actually, I went through a lifelong journey of learning. So all my certifications that came about happened with a lot of discovery to discover more about myself, and hopefully with that add value to the people around me. So the first 6, 7 years have been uh, with software companies, like I said, and picking up roles that I'm not very comfortable doing. I had no clue of what role I picked up, but I was always there, lifting my hand, picking up a role that I never done before. So I moved, I think, 11 years in software companies like that, and then I a friend of mine was doing a startup from the US, and he said, you know what, Eric, just why don't you join the startup bandwagon? And he told me a lot of good things about startups, which when I joined the company, I realized that I met a person in a coffee shop and then built the company. So that's how startup was at that point of time. And I joined Color Tokens, built it from grounds up, then joined Misho when it was Series B company. It's not the Misho that you see today, but it was a Series B which went all the way to Series F. And then I joined Flipkart. Flipkart was the largest company at scale that I've ever joined. But even in Flipkart, I think it was the craziness and scale of the amount of craziness that actually attracted me to Flipkart. And that's a little bit about my journey, but I think it's a lot more about discovery, curiosity, and just reflecting back and discovering something new that I could do for myself and just reinventing myself again and again.
Wow, so interesting, Eric. I don't even know whether we can go to another question after your introduction, because there's so much to converse about right here, right? So did you come from an engineering background, or are you from an HR background?
So an engineering, comp science engineer background, then did my MBA.
Correct. Then did your MBA, but your first job was into HR.
Yeah, my first job was into it.
Got it. But it's so interesting, right? We've seen this trend repeatedly on this show, that just so many so many people from who have now reached the positions of HR heads across a diverse set of company have some kind of computer science or engineering background, right? Or the other thing that we've seen is that they have cut their teeth in business and then moved to HR, right? One of these two combinations is what I've seen like almost on every show, Eric, which I find very, very interesting. And I think somewhere, and I don't know whether you agree, the computer science and engineering background helps you become a more systems thinker, if I may say so. And being a systems thinker probably has an overall positive impact on HR as a function. Is that a right assessment?
So interesting that you say this, because my OD background is also about systems thinking. So I did my OD certification from ISAPS, which is a lot more from systems thinking. But I think the reason it made complete sense, didn't make complete sense then. In fact, my dad went a little crazy, me picking up a role in HR, because HR was never heard of in the family. But I think what helped me in this is most of the first 9 years of my life was in engineering companies. And if you need to understand a word about engineering, you really need to be an engineer, or at least understand the languages or what an engineer goes through, which helped me in my career even to attract people to the job.
Yeah. I think it's extremely important, right? The kind of connect that you can have if you come from that domain and belong to HR is just totally different than if you don't belong to that domain, right? I think real life experience in just about anything is so important and almost irreplaceable sometimes, right? For you. So that's the interesting. The other part that I found very interesting about your journey is the focus that you had on raising your hand and taking projects that were outside your comfort zone. So what's the genesis of that? Why did you do that? Did you know that was a good way of career progression, or career progression was a byproduct of that? Tell me a little more about that.
To be honest, I can continue the HR spiel, but really, really honest and I think I just was out there to prove something to somebody. I don't know whom. Initially, it was my dad. Then it was my bosses around and things like that. But I think what I later discovered was that the newness of discovering something new. Just in startups, we call it the first principle thinking. But I think that was somewhere inherent in the blood that I used to do, because the kind of questions I used to ask would usually not come from a veteran who's been there, done that. It was very, very basic, but I think that is what first principle thinking is about, right? Like you just ask basic questions, figure out, is it really true in this culture, or is it very different from a different culture, etc. Or go about discovering, learning, reading a lot of books, applying what is read in the books, and see if it's practical enough for application, etc. So I think those were anecdotes of what really helped me discover a new thing. And I think somewhere along the way, I think I wanted to leave an imprint that was mine in the job that I do, the value that I create. So I think value creation was a big part of my lifting my hand up in unfortunate situations, or in situations where the company needed me the most.
Yeah. Because if you ask me as somebody that is really observed careers through the years, right? And Eric, a subject of fascination for me always through my life, right, almost since my childhood, has been how do some people do well career wise, and how do some people not do well career wise, right? Because it makes a big difference when you do well career wise, whether you like it or not. And I think the one common thing that I've seen across people that do well is just their ability to raise their hand for tough things, raise their hands towards things that they may or may not find in their comfort zone, right? So the minute they're not sure, is this part of my comfort zone, not means it's probably slightly out of your comfort zone, and people often just raise their hand and try to do that. And that I've found as something which is just a recipe for career success. And the bang opposite of that, as you would probably see as well, is that people that never take initiative, people that never raise their hand towards those particular challenges. And clearly you've been one of those guys that has.
And Swapnil, a metaphor that I like is like, I'm pretty sure everyone invests in stock markets and stuff like that. But I think the more riskier the bet, the greater the return, or, the heavier the losses. To be honest, there has been good things and bad things as well. But for me, I think I've gained a lot from the experiences that I have sort of raised my hand, was very uncomfortable. I think it's the butterflies in the stomach for me. I don't think I can do it. That's exactly the same thing that I'll pick up and do. It was for both my startups, and even within Flipkart as an HR business partner, when I had to make the shift to learning. I raised my hand because of the fact that I used to do learning for a living, but and the joke that goes about is I used to do learning for a living, but now I'm going to get officially be paid for something that I love doing, and that was exactly what Flipkart offered me, with no background in learning, etc. But when I look back, I think there was a lot of background in learning. Those are the risks that I took. I think it has benefited me a lot, Swapnil. And I think
And not just you, Eric. Even if you post this conversation, do an analysis of like anybody that did the hand lifting that you spoke about. Of course, you're going to have a few negative experiences here and there. You're going to fall flat on your face. But when you net things off, you will know that you landed in a better spot than you were earlier. Either you made concrete progress and make the right impression on people, or you learn something which you wouldn't have learned otherwise. That tends to help you subsequently as you go along, right? So great job. Tell me more about what made you a lifelong learner, because that's a term that we tend to use at upGrad quite a lot, right? of lifelong learning. But tell me a little about, were you always a lifelong learner?
No,
Did
I
you
wasn't. So I used to
along
read
the
a
way?
lot. I used to read a lot, but it was more fiction, and I was a lot of that. But suddenly, what I realized is that it was actually the people around me that made me feel a lot more uncomfortable. So, I saw all of these brilliant graduates coming from grade B schools around and stuff like that. And then I realized that, oh, wow, I think I should learn something because, to be honest, I was, like I said, I was the first HR professional from my family, and I never had guidance from anybody else, because the rest of them were either bankers or businessmen. around. So that's when I discovered, okay, this newfound era of people around me who were more learned, more educated, etc. That's how I started off discovering. My venture into learning was in the field of psychology. So I learned about the Melanie Kleins and the Sigmund Freuds and stuff like that, and then went about discovering some parts about me. So initially it was about not being good enough, but I think later on I figured out that every time I learn something, I discover something new about myself.
Wow.
And that helped me become a better individual or a better professional. I don't know about the professional world, Swapnil, but at least in the personal space, it has got me closer to my family or my own, even in the professional space with my own team. And that was, just becoming better than yesterday is a philosophy that I continue to hold,
Wow.
which is very close to my heart.
Wow, I think awesome. Again, there's this lovely quote that says, "You become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. That's why choose them wisely," right?
Yeah,
And I like that part of the quote, right? That's why choose them wisely, right?
wisely.
So if you're going to be constantly in rooms, right, where you feel a little inadequate, right, because
Yeah.
all the other people in that room bring something to the table, that's quite a natural spur for you or anybody to go out and start learning, right? So I think that's a big lesson for people. Surround yourself by people where you feel slightly challenged, or you just naturally feel like learning because you want to catch up in some way with these people, right? So I think that's a great pearl of wisdom, Eric. And I think the other point that you shared, which is again a beautiful quote that I like, which says, uh, sleep smarter than you woke up, right?
Mm.
And I've tried to keep that principle front and center for me, that every day I want to sleep smarter than you wake up. Uh, and if you do that, that compounds so brilliantly over a period of time that you don't even realize the person that you've become, while helping you both, like you said, personally and professionally.
And
No.
Swapnil, I like the idea of compounding, to be honest,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I think the seeds that I sown much earlier in my career
Yeah.
led me to the point today.
Yeah.
So I remember a sales leader talking about this, saying that when you look back, all the dots make sense, but when you look forward, none of that makes sense at all, right? Like
Yeah.
so, and this is a quote from Reed Hastings, right? So
Yeah.
it is interesting that I was on my path of discovery to become a better individual, but now that company sees value in those points that led to my discovery, right? Like so.
Yeah.
So that's where it is. So I think it is the unconventional path that I would like to look at,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
love the idea of compounding because of the fact that the more and more you build on the layer that you're sort of building, I think it definitely will bear fruit in the future.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And just I know we can go on and on, but I want to make another comment on what you said, right? Because if you actually do tough things like you have across a spectrum of companies, when you are in an interview at any place, you can talk about them with a certain, I guess, passion, with a certain understanding that you can't if you've not indulged in really challenging projects. Are you getting it? Because you
Yeah,
just
yeah.
you just come to that particular table with a lot more pride, sometimes a lot more confidence, a lot more saying, hey, I'm a problem solver, I've been in these very tough situations and I've solved these problems. And I think that is the trait most companies are looking for, especially in senior positions, right? So it's such a important part that people actually take that seriously. And to the other thing, Eric, that you said, which I find interesting. So I used to be I still am technically in my mind. I don't do it anymore, but I spent years facilitating and being a
Mm,
trainer myself earlier on. And I would tell people every time I conducted a leadership workshop, I would say that, what, I can copy paste literally everything that I'm saying in the domain of leadership onto parenting, and it
mm,
would still make sense, right?
mm.
Or I can, take everything on parenting and copy paste it into some extent on leadership, and it would make sense broadly,
Yeah.
right? And that's because everything that you learn from the point of self development tends to have a positive impact, like you said, both on the personal side of your life and the professional side of your life.
Swapnil, interestingly,
Yeah.
there was a program that I did many years ago in large
Yeah.
setup,
Yeah.
which came from the idea that I have two boys, and came
Mm.
from the idea that I couldn't spend time with my boys.
Mm.
So what I what I did was, if I had 15 minutes in a day,
Mm,
how would I show up? How would I show up so strongly that they would remember me for the rest of the day, right?
mm,
And that was the program that we did for senior leaders
mm,
at this large company, and we called the program Emerge, right?
mm,
And it was on a problem statement that, and we were HQ, the headquarters was in the US, we were based out of India, and it was, how do you emerge in a influential meeting and
mm.
make matter that 15 minutes makes a difference? How do you show up so strongly, so the best of your things, right? But it came from parenting. It just came from
Wow.
parenting, and it just came from that.
Mm.
And family is a beautiful bed just to take life lessons and just apply it to the workplace.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So much can be learned from both things, right? Tell me what, according to you, if a person is just getting out of college or in their first 2 years of work experience, what advice would you have beyond what we've discussed already, which is definitely great advice? But what advice would you have for them in order to build a great career?
I think a couple of things.
Yeah.
One is, be open
Mm,
to discover something about yourself
mm,
rather than figuring out saying that this is exactly what I want to do. If
mm,
everyone had that level of clarity, I don't
mm,
think we will figure out wherever you want to do, right? Like,
mm,
so be open to experiences.
mm,
Second thing is, if you get discomfort in
mm,
a particular job,
mm,
make sure that you're the best there is,
mm,
and take a lot of learnings from that job and just ensure that you become the best at that skill.
mm,
An example of that, you spoke about facilitation.
mm,
I remember the first facilitation I did
mm,
bombed,
mm,
really bombed. Like, in
mm,
fact, the trainer gave me a score of around 2 out of, I
mm,
don't know, 10 or something like that. I remember the two score number two because I'm not a person who likes to get low scores.
mm,
So what I did next was, I ensured that I practiced 500 times. So I did
mm,
500 of those workshops,
mm,
just volunteered for a lot of things.
mm,
I'm not saying I'm the best at facilitation. I can do a good job at facilitation today
mm,
because of that 500 times that I practiced and I figured. And I spent a lot of time with participants. They said, "Oh, the program was great." So I said, "What about the program did you like? What
mm,
did I do?
mm,
Or what did you discover?
mm,
What did I say next? Or what did help you 2 minutes before that?" So collect feedback from the not so obvious sources, not from your manager, but from people around you,
mm,
and just practice, practice, and practice, and be the best at it.
mm,
Even if you don't like the skill, that skill will be useful because that is a privilege to get that kind of experience, which you will never ever get in your life.
mm, mm. That's so interesting, Eric. You keep opening up Pandora's boxes with it. Because there's just so much to learn from what you're saying, right? So, yeah, I think, of course, we know practice makes you perfect, right? We've heard that all our lives. But I think what a lot of people from my experience don't realize is the only way to get better at something is by doing it,
Yeah,
right? So, if you want to get better at badminton, well, you need to play badminton. You can watch as many YouTube videos as you want, and that will help. But you're never going to get better at badminton until you actually go out and play it, right? And for most skills, you're not going to be so good at the start, right? And I think the only way you get better, like you said, is by doing it. And when you said 500, did you actually mean 500, or was
yeah, I
that
did.
just
So,
you
so
you
this was a
you
company. No,
meant
no.
500?
So,
Yeah,
so in fact, nobody was doing it, and I was an HR business partner, not
yeah,
even responsible for delivering learning.
yeah,
But I just told my learning team that just throw things at me, and I will deliver as much as I can.
yeah,
People found meaning out at it because I was giving business context examples rather
yeah,
than learning funders like frameworks, etc. So people understood, oh, acha, this is how you can
yeah,
understand and stuff like that, and that made a lot of sense.
yeah.
Um, I also used vulnerability as a skill which I didn't know existed in me. So I ended up sharing a lot more about my personal life. So when you talk about family,
Mm.
people know my wife better than
Ah,
she knew them. So in fact, if you go to a company party, people speak to her so warmly, and she's like, where is this coming from? Because I never spoke to them ever in my life. So, those live practical lessons help them connect with me as a facilitator, and that helped discover some things for them in their facilitation.
Yeah. So interesting, Eric, because to your point, you said, one thing was raising your hand and taking up stuff, right? You spoke about that. But often, I think if anybody young is listening to this thing, right, there could be lots of opportunities that are there beyond your immediate job role, right? That can help you, get better at certain things. And every company has them, right? Every company has them where you can just raise your hand and start indulging yourself in a project that's not directly a part of what you're doing, yet can improve your skill on
because everybody,
right?
you work in a startup, Swapnil, everybody needs hands. I'm pretty sure there's only so much in a day. I can give you another example. So this is to become a better father. I actually took a basic course of storytelling, right? What I discovered is how a woman feels in a bunch, in a place filled with men, because I was the only man and there were 40 women participants there. So, and today, I understand that feeling because I also lead inclusion and diversity. I have that feeling and stuff like that, right? But I also played a very critical role, at least telling stories to my children, and that was my only discovery. But that helped me in a lot more storytelling courses that I did much later in many other companies that I've done. But it was a path to discovery that I figured out. It's the curious you that you have to discover. And also one other feedback is don't discount people around you. They tell you intelligent advices. Unfortunately, we look only up for advice and don't you should never discount people around you. They tell you some interesting things about you which you will never discover for yourself.
So true, and again so interesting, because there's a very nice quote, Eric, that says every person knows something that you don't, right? And literally, if you have that fixed in your head that every person knows something you don't, you walk into conversations with a very different mindset, right? There's another nice quote that says, I may not get the exact words, but basically it says nobody is that stupid that he or she can't teach you something, right? So every person that you meet, even if you don't think of them very highly, there's lots of stuff that they can teach you, right? But that gets connected to what you said earlier about the open mind, right? You need to have an open mind towards work, you need to have an open mind towards people, you need to have an open mind towards the feedback, right? I've just written your earlier point of saying, hey, I would go to participants and actually ask them feedback, because that's connected to what you just said as well. And well, we don't do that enough, right? And it's not just, Eric, you spoke about your feedback from the bosses. It's surprising, and I'm sure you will find that true, that most bosses or leaders don't give their people enough feedback, right? Both positive and negative.
They don't see the reason why bosses, especially at position that I am, people above me don't spend as much time as my team spends with me. Right?
Absolutely.
And if they, in fact, I've become a better leader, or at least better than yesterday, a better manager or a better leader, just by the fact that, Eric, when you said this is what I got heard about, right? Can you tell this differently? Then you have a choice then whether you want to say it that way or say it deliberately differently, right?
Correct.
And to be honest, if you can create that space within your friend circle, within people around, within your family, they will tell you things that you would never ever get in a performance management system or from your bosses, etc. I think that's enough said, but I'm just saying there's enough lessons in how much we discount people around us, and if you actually account for all of them, you will become at least a more grounded human being than what you are today.
Absolutely. So I think the key point for anybody listening is learn from everyone, right? Everyone knows something that you don't. That's one point, at least I'm taking away. It's a reiteration for me. The other big point, Eric, is ask for feedback, right? So there's one thing being open-minded and taking feedback when it comes, but there's a totally different thing of actually going and asking somebody feedback, right? There's a lovely Hillary Clinton quote, Eric, that says, don't take feedback personally, take feedback seriously, right? And most people are busy taking feedback personally and not seriously. And what you should be doing is the bang opposite, right?
In fact, one thing for people who find it difficult taking feedback, this is the question that I ask myself: what experience did I give that person, which made the person feel this about? Right.
Correct.
So then it's about the experience rather than it's about me, Eric. And if I can change that experience for that person, I think I can show up a little more differently for that person, and then see, see how things are differently. And I think this is something that I tell my team often. Life is like a chess game. It is the move that you make, someone else will make the counter move.
Yeah, so interesting, right? Again, every time you take feedback, and I want your comment on that, right? I think an interesting differentiation is understanding something and accepting something are two different things altogether, right? So, listen to the feedback that you get, truly understand what they're trying to say. You may or may not be able to accept or action that feedback. That feedback may not be accurate in a lot of cases, but just listening to the feedback is going to help. Whether you action something or don't action something after that does not matter, right? But I think that's such an interesting point. The other thing which seems like such a big theme with you is trying to get better at every role that you indulge in, right? Because I think anybody that takes an effort to say, you know what, I'm going to try to become a better parent, right? I don't think we do that very consciously, right? Of saying, being a parent is a role that I play. And there's one aspect of parenting, which is storytelling, that I want to get better at, right? And I want to take this particular course, right? Or you could be a spouse to somebody and say, you know what, I want to actually read up a little bit on how to become a better spouse. We don't do that as
By the way,
often
I read up a lot, even to become, before my first son's delivery. I wanted to show up for at least to be the perfect husband for my wife. Because at the end of the day, I'm not going through pregnancy myself, right? And I wanted to see how can I support her. And unfortunately, I couldn't do that. So there were a lot of books that I read. I used to ask her, saying that, how are things done and stuff like that. And I also read up a lot about positive parenting. Could I apply everything? No, but I started applying some pieces of it. And what I realized is the kind of time that I'm spending, the quality time that I'm able to spend was brilliant. Because I think today, if I have a safe place like family, is because of the investment that they did and the space that I was able to create for them to show up strong.
Yeah, absolutely. A big career hack. I don't know. So I was asked this in a talk that I was giving, saying, what's the biggest key to career success? I said marrying right is is one big career hack. And because just the truth of the matter, in the knowledge economy, where as against the industrial economy, where you probably go and do something which is manual, right, in nature, your mental state does not play as big a role if in manual labor as it does in the knowledge economy, where what you're bringing onto the table is your brain or your mind in some way, right? So if you're not going to be in a stable state mentally, and a lot of that is connected to what's happening at home, it's often very difficult to turn up and deliver your best there. Now, of course, it's commendable that some people do it in spite, but I think it's a huge positive to have that
it
in
is,
space.
Swapnil, we are not perfect parents. Like, in fact, when we grew up, we were not taught to become better fathers or better spouses, etc. So I think like my wife and I think communication was key. And I say this, we hold hands and talk. We ensure that in a day that there are moments where we just talk to each other just to figure out how they're doing, etc. And I think that plays a big difference. Of course, at the workplace, holding hands will not be okay, but I think a communication between a colleague, just to understand what the person is going through, how you talk to them, how you understand, how you're curious about them. Like, you seem to be having a burst of joy today. How is that helping you? What happened? Just being curious a little more, I think will go places. Curiosity is a big piece of what. Like, for me, I have a younger boy who's 7 years old. And I said, how come you seem to be very excited today? What happened? And then he talks about school, and he talks about his whole story about thing. But the fact of the matter is, his dad asked the story of what happened in school, and he wanted to share that joy in the 5 minutes, and that made a difference to him. I think those are moments that I think we forget to be human in the workplace, and we just think we are a bunch of resources who's getting work done, right? Like so. So I think that's the difference, and I think that's what helps me even with employees too. Even in difficult situations like layoffs, or even difficult situations that people are going through a personal thing. I don't ask a lot of personal questions to my team, but I basically tell them, that I hope you're doing okay, or I'm a Christian, so I just say that, what, I think what I'll do tonight is when I kneel down and pray, I'll pray for you.
Yeah.
I hope that's okay, and that's probably it. I don't ask a lot more questions beyond that, because it is a personal space. But I think people find a lot of solace in just doing that and just being with the person. I think that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting. I think there is nothing more important than genuine care,
Yeah.
right? So my next question to you is this, right? You seem to be somebody that leads people well, from whatever I've read about you. Tell me a little bit about if you had to tell me 2 or 3 things that helps you become a good leader of teams, what are those 2 or 3 things?
I think the one thing that my team will tell about me is the fact that I'm honest. I'm not going to lie through my teeth, even if it's the most difficult conversation. I would rather call spade a spade, be honest about it, and I say that both of us are adults. We will deal with it together, right? Even if it's good feedback or bad feedback, right? The second thing that I truly like is vulnerability is a key strength that I have. I talk a lot about what I go through as a leader. Most people tend to hide it, saying that I'm struggling with this, or it's not something. Can you help me going about it, etc. And I think the third thing is just whatever you read, whatever you get inspired today. I share a lot of that with the team, and my hope is that it's that single source of inspiration can inspire somebody in the team today. So I think these are the 3 things that I do a lot more, and I've been intentionally practicing this more and more in the team. And because I wish the team learns a lot more than and in fact, if we can access brilliant minds, I think we'll be a very powerful force to be. If the team is honest, I don't need to second guess anybody at a certain point of time, and that can only be showcased if I model that behavior. And that is the reason why it is a hard thing, to be honest. And I'm telling you this because I have been in situations where I had to let go of people, and even there I said, I can't tell you a lot of things, but it's not going to be easy, and I'm going to be with you through that journey, right? So those are the 2-3 things that I do. I don't know whether I'm a better manager or a great manager. Like I said, I'm learning on the go, and I don't know whether I'll ever achieve perfection as the best leader around. But like I said, I think the discovery is if I can create a space for the team around me to actually be themselves, I think that's the best thing that I can at least open for a leader.
Got it. I think none of us are ever going to be perfect leaders, professionals, parents, spouses. I think we should remove that conception out of our head. As long as we're bettering ourselves every day in some way, and as long as we're relatively effective. There's this French philosopher, I forget his name. He talks about parenting, where he says, in parenting there's no perfect parent, there's just good enough, right? So don't try to be perfect, because you'll kill yourself doing it. Are you good enough, right? And getting better. Are you good enough and getting better? I think that's what's most important. Tell me a little more about vulnerability. What do you mean by that? Tell me, give us some actionable from how you lead people from the space of vulnerability.
So what is the most powerful thing in any dialogue is how you're feeling about the conversation. So I also deal with a lot of emotions in a conversation. So, for example, let's say I'm going through, like I just recently moved from an HR business partner role to a learning.
Yeah.
My first address to the team is, hey, you know what? This is a passion project that I started off many years ago. I'm not sure how I show up,
Mm.
but I'm pretty sure this team will tell me a little more about how I will do, what I will do, etc.
Mm.
I'm nervous and excited too. I'm not sure what I'll discover. I might fall flat on my face, and I will get there. But I trust that everyone will keep me honest, and even if I suck at it, please tell me I suck at it. I like being told that way, and that is vulnerability.
Yeah.
All right,
Got it.
just telling authentically how you feel, what do you do, uh, because at the end of the day, this is what I believe. All of us are a bag of stories,
Mm.
and we are all suckers for emotions.
Mm.
And if we connect at the emotive
Yeah.
level, this is
Yeah.
the same team who will stand by you
Yeah.
at multiple moments of time.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that that's the way to go. And if you connected at an emotive level, every team will stand by you when you need them the most.
Yeah, absolutely. I think vulnerability is so important, and your point, vulnerability also connects with honesty, right?
Yeah,
To some degree, which is basically being honest and sharing your fears, your
yeah,
weaknesses, your apprehensions about a certain situation. I think that's what
that's correct.
being vulnerable is in some way. And if you don't do that, you're not going to become a good leader, because
Yeah.
if you want to be your authentic self, Eric,
Mm.
everybody's authentic self has certain positives and certain negatives. It has
Sure.
certain areas of strength, certain areas of weaknesses, and your ability to articulate both
Yeah.
at times, along with the most important thing, which is say, "Hey, I don't know," right? I think that's the ultimate vulnerability as a
The other
leader.
thing
Just
also
say,
is I
I
need
don't
help,
know.
and often as
Yeah,
leaders we don't ask that.
yeah,
We think leader expectation is that leaders should know everything. To be
yeah,
honest, leaders I have not known. I've led teams who are much more senior to me in age,
yeah,
much more experienced to me.
yeah.
I think leader is about, and I remember this book. I forget the name of the book, where this dad who talks about who turns to become a teacher because his son committed suicide.
Mm,
And this dad said, "My role as a teacher is to unlock the doors of knowledge for each student,
mm,
and ensure that the student can access that level of knowledge." Right. So it's
mm,
us to reach out
mm.
to each member and truly hone the person's skills and ensure that the person shines much better than what they were today. Right. Like, and that's
Yeah.
my job as a leader as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very interestingly, in the knowledge economy, Eric,
Mm.
more often than not, your team members know more about the job than you do,
Absolutely.
right? If you just think about it logically,
Yeah.
because the higher you go in the leadership spectrum, you keep becoming more of a generalist,
That's correct.
right? And somebody else is the specialist on the ground, right?
Sure.
On that thing. So if you're not going to be honest, if you're not going to be vulnerable, if you're not going to say, "Hey, you know what, I don't know as much about that thing as you do, so please educate me on
Yeah.
that," you're never going to learn enough for you
Correct.
to take more informed decisions, right? Eric, what do you think are the skills which are important um, in today's day and age and going ahead? If you had to look at skills from the spectrum of today and over the next 3 years, what would you say are the 2 or 3 important skills that people need to possess to do well?
See, one of the biggest skills is to go back and read.
Mm,
I think it's a nowadays I'm reading history, okay,
mm,
and I got inspired by a podcast that and I in fact I was identifying a lot of time wasters in my life, and
mm,
the time that I drive down the road to the office is the biggest time waster that I have, and I listen to some music which doesn't make any difference in my life. So I
mm,
started listening to podcasts, and one of the podcast shows that I listened to actually influenced me to read a lot of history.
mm,
Is to go back in history and discover some things that is already discovered before, right? And
mm,
then read a lot about it, get
mm,
inspiration from that, and then come
mm,
back and
mm.
apply certain things. So
Got
I
it.
think the skill of experimentation is
Mm,
going to be a very, very important skill,
mm,
because in this day and age, we
mm,
don't know what the future is going to come up.
mm,
Nobody is clear of what the future is about. Today it's AI. Tomorrow it could be something else.
mm,
Um, read, be thorough about the subject, and see what practical use that I could do to enable to solve a particular problem statement that I have the workplace. If that can, if that can help, that'll be great. The second one, which is a very important skill, is first principles thinking. Ask more fundamental questions because they are so fundamental that nobody thinks about it, right? So ask a lot more things. You'll discover a lot more pieces with respect to that. And the third piece is actually the power of listening. Asking, putting your ears to the ground, understanding why this makes sense, and then figuring out whether does it really make sense, or just I'm just here to do this job, right? Like it is much more than that. Are you creating a level of impact, etc.? It may not be. These are universal skills even beyond 3 years, but these are three, four things which definitely at least truly make sense with respect to certain things.
Got it. It's so interesting that you said the first skill is just reading, right?
Yeah.
Because it seems like such a lost skill
It is.
now to just
It is.
read and especially read in long format, right?
Yeah.
I was reading some stats somewhere that they said because of the smartphone, overall people are possibly reading a lot more than they did earlier, right? Because you're reading, say, on an Instagram, you're reading a quote, or you're reading something smaller on Twitter, on Facebook, a news article, so on and so forth. But you're not reading enough depth wise, right? You're not reading enough books, you're not reading even enough articles these days, right? Like proper articles. And you know, still, if you want to learn something new, the pathway to learning is clearly through reading, right? It's the quickest way to assimilate knowledge in some way. So yeah, I think that's a lovely point. The second thing that you said is around experimenting, right? That you said is very important because the future is uncertain. So you need to have a knack of experimenting and you know, doing and getting.
So, Swapnil, what is interesting about experimentation is nobody knows. And you know, you'll be very surprised of what you'll discover because you start up thinking something, and this is the beauty about startups, right? I think the beauty about startups is not the idea that finally that you land by, but it's the multiple pivots that a startup can do to ensure that you reach the idea which actually truly makes business sense.
And the same thing is true with any function, right?
Yes.
As a part of your learning and development also, you'll do a lot of mini pivots that will happen. So whether it's at the macro stage of the startup business model doing pivots, or whether it's within a certain department, right? You're pivoting all the time, whether you realize it or not. And the pivots happen due to new learnings that come along the way, right? So I think your point of, you know, a key skill is your ability to experiment, which essentially means deal with uncertainty.
That's
right. When uncertain projects is what experiments are, where you don't truly know what is going to come out of it, and then your ability to learn and then take that to something which makes sense and that helps the company and the people around you. I liked your point of listening. I think that's again a key universal and universal skill, and a skill that's going to be used for a very, very long time, right? It's so interesting, you know, Eric, I used to do a one-day workshop on the subject of listening or / receiving information for one of my customers. And I thought it was such an interesting subject, right, to do a workshop on, because the one sub-skill, which is a part of every major skill, is listening. Right?
Absolutely.
Which means that if you want to be a good leader, you need to listen. If you want to be a good spouse, you need to listen. If you want to be a good parent, you need to listen.
And I'll give you an example, just more practical example at the workplace. So in the learning and development department, the one thing that we do is we collect feedback from participants. But what we don't do is we don't reach out to the participants after 3 months and 4 months and say, hey, you know, you learned this skill, you had these insights, you had this aha moment. What did you do about it? What did you learn? What you truly assimilate? How are you applying this learning in the workplace? Nobody asked them. And it is a product-led model. So you do a lot of product thinking. If you're building a product, you go to your customers. So we call it the listen in here. And that's exactly what we did. And the belief, something like I'm telling you this, the belief that my team had on their own facilitation skills that people are applying is actually profound, because now you see your work in action actually truly in the workplace. And there is a lot of aha moments that my team members have. And suddenly facilitation from theoretical formats to actual practical examples, saying that, hey, your colleague applied this, and this is the shift he or she saw. You want to go talk to your colleague, please go ahead and talk, and then come back to the workshop and then truly believe that it works, right? Or even asking this question of, how do you listen today? It is a very interesting question because, it's a skill like breathing. How do you breathe today? Is nobody asks you that question, but it is more fundamental. And that helps you think a lot more about the way you actually take things for granted and how you do certain things.
That's so interesting. Listen in a way where you want people to speak to you, and speak in a way where you want people to listen to you, right? I think both components, listening and speaking, or on the other side, reading and writing, I think all four components are so critical to a person doing well, both professionally and personally, right? But especially listen in a way where people want to speak to you, I think is an important one.
One more skill that, because you asked for three, I gave you three, but one more skill that I think is misunderstood is reflection. And I say this, this is the 6th or the 7th time that I've written an autobiography about myself. And every time, to be honest, Swapnil, when I read back on the stories that I read, I realize my life was not so bad as I wrote it out to be, but the narratives have changed and shifted. One of the key founders of Flipkart was Mukesh Bansal, and in fact, he's written 25 letters to himself at the end of every year, and he reads them now, and your levels of thinking starts shifting as you write. And as part of my course and what I do, I write a little bit, but that's also very, very important skill that people need to have. And I don't know if it's for the future or for the present. Present is definitely needed. And I think the more you discover a lot more about how you write your thinking, I think it just helps.
Yeah. Oh God, like such another Pandora's box. I was supposed to ask you another question, but we'll reflect on this.
Yeah.
We'll reflect on your reflection, right? So, I think reflection is nothing but your ability to learn in a way yourself,
That's
right? Right, that's what reflection is. Another close cousin of reflection, and often it's the same thing, is introspection, right? And I often I say introspection is nothing but asking yourself the question, in a situation, what could I have done better, right? Because that's the only thing that matters in some way, right? So in any situation, success, failure, good, bad, amazing job you did at something, still ask yourself, is there anything I could have done better in this situation? Reflect on that a little bit and absorb the learning. Even if you fail, do the same thing, right? And writing as a subsection of reflection is so interesting, because writing is nothing but concretized thought, right?
Yes.
So if you really want to understand your thought and become a clear thinker in any situation, please write it down.
Yeah.
And Eric, you will discover that's why so many people don't like writing, because it takes a lot of strenuous thought to write, because it's your thought concretized. So Jeff Bezos has this thing where he talks about, right? He talks about saying, write a note first that you will circulate in a meeting. Everybody will go through the document first, and then we'll have a discussion, right, on that. And that's because he wants everybody to get their thinking clear to start with before you actually have a discussion on something. So encouraging yourself to write helps a lot in your reflection. And even in your interactions with other people, if you can first write down your thought process and then start a conversation, you'll find yourself having much better conversations with people, especially in structured scenarios, right? Absolutely. You'll have much better.
And Swapnil, I think even if I'm able to articulate the way I'm able to articulate today, it's because of writing. Because I usually, one of my weaknesses, at least in the past, is I think, speaking and thinking. Speaking happens much faster than I think, right? And what helped me become a lot more better than what I was initially is just by the fact that I could write down some aspects of my life and just talk about these anecdotes, which I would have never ever talked about in the future, right? And I think the beauty about introspection and reflection is that if you talk about yourself as a very interesting person and say that, Eric did this today. Interesting. So why did he do what he did? What happened before? What happened later? You will discover a lot of things, and then maybe you should ask that Eric to do different things, and that becomes maybe another experiment that you could do. So I think a lot of insights come in through writing. I wish I could write a lot more, which happen to write because of the courses and the learning that I do. But I think for whatever I've written, I've been able to discover a lot more than I would have ever gone through some 10 courses that I've done. I think writing has helped me give me a lot of thought clarity than what I've done before.
And that's why even reading helps writing. Right, in some way reading helps writing. And just my suggestion to people, use your phone, right? Because my note section is so populated, because you can so easily today, if you have a thought, you can type it out, and then you can see the flow of that, right? And that really will bring a lot of clarity to your thoughts. Writing, Eric, is the cheapest therapy, right? In some way, right? It is the cheapest therapy, because you can actually see your thoughts on paper, and in so many different aspects, it's of great help. Eric, unfortunately for me, we have run out of time. And I just feel like I'm getting started with this conversation. I have tons of more questions for you, but I don't want to keep you back further than I committed. Eric, this was a fascinating conversation, and I thoroughly enjoyed speaking to you. And my prediction is, because of this overall approach that you have, I predict, most importantly, that you're going to have a very good life, a very wholesome life, a very fulfilled life. Because for me, I think those components are far more important than what you do next professionally. I can see that you're going to live a very, very good, fulfilled, happy life with your overall approach.
Thanks a lot, Swapnil, for I think what you started off the conversation is that you said it'll be a thorough conversation. I don't need to be prepared a lot, and we will have a conversation. I think, true to what you said, you asked some interesting questions which helped me unlock or discover a lot more things about myself. So truly blessed to have this conversation, and thank you so much, Swapnil, for sharing your story along with the journey that we discovered together.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I hope we can.
Sure. Same here, Swapnil.
Okay, thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.